to another episode of Sisto Says, hosted by and powered by Design 2147, New York City Code and Zoning Consultants here in New York City. Today I have a special guest, my friend Joe Ciolino from Advantage Sport and Fitness.
Correct.
So Joe, welcome aboard.
Thanks so much, Sisto. Honored to be here. Thank you for having
welcome
me.
to the show.
Thanks.
So as usual, I always start the show off by how I get to meet people, and I met you several months ago at up in Westchester at a networking event, and we started chatting, and I asked you what you did, and you told me you sell gym equipment, and I was like, it has nothing to do with what I do.
Right.
And within about 3 minutes, we were talking about amenity spaces and gyms in existing buildings, new buildings, and what your firm offers. And there was this great connection about, architecture, residential buildings, commercial buildings, as well as, retrofitting existing buildings for amenity spaces.
Right.
So Joe, tell us a little bit about, who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty about, our connection in the architectural world.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Sisto. It's an honor to be here. And from the moment I met you, I just felt this instant connection. Like you were like my uncle in the room. You were just like, here's a guy. I could tell you're in real estate, really personable, and I'm glad we hit it off. So.
Oh, excellent. Yep. And we've been in multiple networking groups together. It's just next time I saw you, I'm like, there he is again.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's great.
Yeah, our worlds collided pretty quickly. So I'm a territory sales manager for Advantage Sport and Fitness, and developers, property managers, owners really rely on us to help design and outfit their fitness amenities. We really partner with them across the board. It's not something that we do, like to do after the fact. It's really a proactive process. It's
so you're part of the design. You're not just selling the equipment.
Right.
You're actually trying. You make a great space for the equipment.
Correct.
And for the people that will use the amenity space. So it's not just like, well, here's two pieces of equipment. Right. Take care.
Yeah, no. We would definitely position ourselves as a full immersive amenity consultant, not just the equipment broker. That's just a part of what we do.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
So, but the part that intrigued me about it, and when we started talking about it, was I was like, Joe, how do you go to an existing building? Mm-hmm. I gave you an example off the air, right?
Sure.
One of the gentlemen who works here at Design, he lives in a co-op in Queens. Mm-hmm. They have a whole bunch of buildings, like 14 buildings,
right? And
they have no amenity space.
Right.
And I'm sure that over time, someone comes along and says, "Hey, we're getting a lot of pressure from our co-op owners that there is no space." And I think that's what really intrigued me about our conversation when we first met was I was driving home that night and I'm like, I really should have Joe on the show because I think he can bring a different perspective to our audience that if I was an owner of all these apartments, right? And they were all co-op owners and they want a gym. Some of them are young, some of them are old. They need physical therapy. They need a place to work out.
Sure.
Whatever they need. And they need a place just to go.
Right.
Well, first of all, how do you convince a board to give up square footage to put in an amenity space? So that's my first question. Because if they wanted one, they would have did it 30 years ago.
Right.
So here we are now in 2023. People want amenity space, and people don't want it next to the boiler room anymore. They want it where they get a little bit of a view. They can see some trees. They can see some people walking around. So my first question is, as a person being on the sales side of it, when they come to you, especially in existing buildings, because I think that's really a different market than obviously a new building.
Right.
When they know up front they want an amenity space.
Right.
So how do you go about that?
Well, it's all about the prospective tenant as well, right? So say you're in an apartment building in New York City and you're seeing sales decrease and you don't really know why. Right? You're going to start to look around the block and see what's going up that is new, actually, for a benchmark comparison. Why are people flocking to other buildings? Rent Cafe put out a wonderful statistic, which really works in our favor. They surveyed about 3,000 people, prospective renters, and they saw that 47% of them were looking for fitness amenities in their buildings. And out of that 47, 28% of them actually considered it a deal breaker if you don't have a fitness center.
It's funny because, my son lived in Hoboken.
Right.
And he was deciding whether to live in a building or live in a townhouse,
Sure.
like a typical brownstone.
Right.
And he chose a brownstone. But one of the deciding factors was the buildings that he was looking at didn't have amenity space. So he said, well, if I got to go there and pay more rent and still have to go to a gym, I'd rather go to a private place where I got a nicer apartment, more feel of where I grew up than in an apartment building, very private. And he said the gym was down the street. But definitely, you know, we hear that as well when we're looking through the plans, that you have, when a developer and the marketing team is looking for something, an amenity space is a driving force now.
Of course, yeah. It really is a highly demanded, hot amenity. I mean, you take the pandemic, what happened over the past 2 to 3 years, and they locked down these amenities. They locked down the gyms, and they said, focus on your health, but you can't work out.
Right.
So what are you going to do then? Gonna go a little crazy. And a lot of people really look to the gym as not only to enhance their physical or mental health, but also their social dimension of wellness as well. You meet people in your building.
You're interacting with others.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, and way back when, I don't want to mention the company, but there was a company that did a survey of all of their office buildings. Huge company around the world.
Right.
And they realized that they were paying some astronomical number for a certain amount of square footage for the corporate offices to have gyms.
Right.
And they decided they were going to take them all out.
What happened?
And they ripped them all out, and they got such backlash that the employees were like, they're like, well, but we're paying for, but you're paying for that square footage, and it was part of your lease with the management company. It wasn't open to the public; it was private for that corporation, whoever it was. Huge company, but they had hundreds of locations, and this was, I'm talking 20 years ago. I can only imagine if they tried to do that now.
I know. No.
It just wouldn't happen.
It would be uproar and a mass exodus. Completely.
And not only that, the cop out was, we'll give you a stip for $25 a month. You could go to a gym. And they're like, well, we don't want to go to a gym. We want to come here. We want to work out. We want to take a quick shower, and then we want to go.
Exactly.
So one of the things now we tie back into the building code, and having you here is excellent because I think a lot of questions that get asked to this office is, well, I want to have a gym, but we're not a physical cultural establishment, and I want to have showers. Well, for the longest time, we couldn't have showers. So people are like, wait a second, so how do I go to the gym, work out, and then you want me to put my suit on and go upstairs?
Go back upstairs and smell in the office.
So I understand now that that's changed.
Yes.
So because it's not a physical cultural establishment, you are permitted to have showers, and you don't have to go to BSA.
We're seeing them in corporate. We're seeing them in multifamily. It's really becoming a very spa-like amenity as well.
It should be.
They're giving options, right? And if you want to say corporate, for example, which, as we know, in New York City is still trying to find its footing, right? And it's very circumstantial at least from what I'm seeing. The big players are always making moves. The big owners and managers are always going to upgrade their amenities to attract the tenants in there. And like you said, to your point, the organizations are still requesting their private gym amenity spaces within that subset of
And for a while,
space.
the city just wouldn't allow it because they couldn't take a shower. So no one was using the gym.
But now even if there's not a shower, they still want the amenities in there. Right. They still want to freshen up. I mean, also take into consideration, a lot of people are in offices, 3 to 4 days a week now. It's not 5 days a week fully. So if you're going to have them, even if you have to shrink down your square footage in corporate,
big deal.
Amenities still have to be there. Well, you have to have them come back into the office. What's going to drive them to come back is these amenities.
Well, the networking, I don't know if you were at the last one, but one of the ones that I was at, and I wasn't sure if you were there or you may have been there, where they were talking about, corporate used to need, if they had 100% of their footprint, they were allocating a certain amount. Now they've allocated less for the workers' stations
and more for the amenities.
Yep. And I specifically remember this person who was on the realtor side, on the commercial realtor side, said, well, that's one of the ways that the employers are trying to get the employees to come back. They got the whole cafes, they got this, they got a lunch station, they have a gym, they have a shower, you know, and clearly in the Class A buildings, that is definitely a model.
Right.
It is definitely, because without it, it seems like then you're back to being, you're a different class, you know, you're in a different sector of the commercial real estate
Class
world.
A, there's no question about it, but now we're seeing it in class, you know, in different classes B and the renovations
Of
as well.
course. And they're willing to give up the square footage, whereas in the past, the old school was you don't give up an inch.
No.
Nothing.
Well, now we know what's interesting about corporate specifically too, and it's happening in multifamily. They're actually reaching out to the tenants, to the end users, and they're asking what they want to see. They're coming to them now. It's not just about
what they want to give them.
Yeah, it's like, here's the amenity. Good luck. I don't care if you like it or don't like it. Now it's like they have the prospective renters, the tenants, the anchor tenants especially, they have the power.
Right.
And they're telling them, this is what we want if we want to consider your building.
Correct.
Right? So that changes the whole dynamic.
Well, the voice of the customer.
Yeah.
You know, that's
how it should be, honestly.
It should, because you know, what's the point of you think you know what the customer wants,
you have no idea.
You don't have no
Unless
idea.
you do that market research, you have no idea.
Yeah, exactly, and it holds true in even in my own business. A lot of times after we finish a project, we'll call our customers and say, "So what'd you think?" "Well, we think you could have did this better," and we're like, "Thank you."
Yeah. That feedback is gold.
It is, because if you're not open to hearing the criticism, then you can never make your products better, right? And the same thing applies in your... Well, yeah, you gave us an amenity space, but like I said, you gave it to me on the second floor with the boiler room underneath it. Right? Well, what good is that?
And that's a great point you made. So the way we formulate space allocation for fitness amenities is we always like to get in the project early, right? Say it's a new development.
Well, that's right.
It doesn't always happen. A lot of times they come after us where
and it's an afterthought.
Yeah, DD is set. There's an afterthought. They're like, okay, we have this space for an amenity, but it's 300 square feet, but you have 500 people in the building. Expected usage is, say, 30%. That's really tight for that space.
Small, right.
So, and then they think, okay, well, where can we relocate this? And now it's a bunch of change orders, and then it's aggravation, and then there's tension. We like to avoid all that, get in the project early with you, and really act as your consultant through and through. And the reason why is because we don't want there to be the stagnation of the project. We don't want to have the change orders mount up, have the funds go through the roof. Then you're trying to squeeze out money from the fitness center and reallocate money around the building. It gets crazy.
It just gets crazy.
Yeah, we have specific metrics, specific formulas that we utilize based on the building metrics.
Sure. Well, you got to know how many people are in the building and how many
100%.
people. You know, there's like anything else in the world.
It's not a guessing game.
It's not a guessing, right? Because you're not going to build a 10,000 square foot gym if you only got 200 people in the building.
Correct.
But on the flip side, you're not going to build a 100 square foot gym if you have 200 people in the building. There's a sweet spot.
Happens.
Of course.
Yeah.
There's always a sweet spot.
Right.
You know, and you can tell when you go to even today, in today's day and age, you go to newer hospitality places. The gyms are tremendous and they're beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Right. You know, and I always equate the gym to. I love to cruise. My wife and I, we've been around the world. We love it, right? And I always get up in the morning and I say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. And I wake up super early and I get down there and I can't get through the door.
Right.
And I say to myself, well, they know they have 4,000 passengers. Right. How do they have a gym
exactly.
that's
this small?
they literally need a bigger ship.
Yeah.
But they build more rooms and less amenity, which is everybody on vacation wants to work out.
But notice how big the gift shop is.
Right.
Huge.
Exactly.
Right.
So there's a perfect example that, you know, whenever I'm on the cruise, they always ask for the survey.
Right.
I always write on the bottom, not enough room. Why, if I'm on vacation, why do I have to work out at 11 o'clock at night?
Sure.
That makes no
sense.
Just
to avoid the crowd.
Just to avoid the crowd. So so instead of working out in the gym, I'm doing the circle around the boat, you know, on the track, you know, because I'm outside and I like it. But my point is you can't get near a piece of equipment,
right?
Unless you go at dinner time. Yeah. You know, so clearly there's a perfect example of, you know, if you don't go to the right firm that understands that, you know. Sell equipment, but selling the equipment is part of it. But creating great spaces is how you keep your brand and how you move on to the next building and the next building and the next building. Yeah. But one of the things that was very interesting that you and I were at a seminar together, which was a group speaking about office to residential conversion. And one of their big things was that when you do these offices to residential, you're going to get high ceilings and you're going to get big windows. So I could just see guys like you.
My face is
Joe
lighting
going,
up.
all right, baby. You, this is a dream come true. You know, this is put it on the second floor, looking out over 59th Street. And even though there's a lot of traffic and a lot of people, but we got big windows, we got high ceilings.
Yeah.
You know, just the feeling of being in that space and working out is like a home run.
Yeah,
So
the experience is phenomenal when you can convert something with those architectural features in there. We get a ton of natural light, the high ceilings. You don't have to worry about an 8-foot ceiling, but you have a functional frame that's 7-11 and you can't do a pull-up on.
Right.
So these are all things, great point, that you take into consideration when you're designing and outfitting a fitness center.
Right.
And through the process that we go through, it is highly collaborative, but not just with the developer, but with the architect, interior designer, the GC, sometimes a building engineer if we have to bolt something to the floor.
Sure.
We have to make sure that the slab is clean. So it goes very, very deep. It's very, very detailed. And like you said in the beginning, it's not just as much as
power for all the equipment.
Oh.
Just
Wi-Fi. That's funny you said that. Our treadmills that we offer from Precor, they need specific dedicated lines with the NEMA 520
you put
receptacle.
10 of them on one line, you pop all the circuits.
Exactly. And everyone's like, oh, you can't just plug this into the wall? No. And then we do the install, and even if it's a new dev, they're like, still have the wrong outlets. So we tag everything in our drawings to make sure it's very smooth for them.
When you've been in the business for 37 years, the day that you go to get your TCO and we do the pre-walkthrough a few weeks before.
Right.
It's amazing how great the place looks and how everything's perfect.
Right.
And then you'll go back, 6 months later to do the final CO, and the super will be going, oh, that doesn't work. This doesn't work. So I'm sure
got a plan.
Sure the same exact principle has to happen. And it's funny, a really good friend of mine who I'm going to leave nameless, we went out for dinner one night, and he's a developer, and he decided to get an apartment in his building. And he's a big workout guy. So he actually didn't do that particular building. He built it, but he wasn't on that job. Someone in his office actually built that one.
Okay.
And when it was over, he said, you know what? The apartments, I really want to live in this location. It was in Brooklyn.
Nice.
And he said, I'm going to take the top floor and I'm going to live here. This is going to be my permanent residence. His kids are older, and it's got a view of downtown Manhattan. It's beautiful. And it's got a gym in it. And he loves to. He's a gym guy, and he goes down there. He goes in the gym. He looks around. Calls me up. He goes, I think I'm going to rip this whole gym apart. I go, you just got the TCO last week. He goes, Sisto, it just doesn't work. And
what was he upset about?
Well, just that it wasn't the right dynamics.
Right.
There was too many people. The room wasn't big enough. It was in a bad location. And he said, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll never do it again.
Right.
He realized that it wasn't the architect's fault. He said, we were just as at fault because when they asked us, where do you want it? We said, well, we just want it here.
Right.
And we thought of it as an afterthought.
Exactly.
Now it's the opposite. Now we're like, okay, we need a rooftop. We need we
Indoor,
always
outdoor
needed a great
fitness.
deal. Well, one of the things exactly, indoor, outdoor fitness is big.
It's huge.
2 is, we need workspaces where people are in the apartments, but they don't want to work in the apartment. They want to go to like a little space. So they did coffee, the whole thing in a residential building, right?
Yeah.
It's big. TV screen, you could connect. It's almost like they built an office within the lobby or a space, like being in a hotel.
Right.
Right? It's more like a hotel than it is an apartment building. Yeah. Then the gym's not down in the basement anymore. It's not the afterthought. It's part of, well, if I want to rent these apartment market rate at this rate or affordable, it doesn't matter. It's all the same place. It has to be a good experience. If not, they're going to pack it up and they're going to go down the street.
100%.
And they'll spend another $100 or $200 a month, but they'll get what they want.
And that's where planning and design comes into play so heavily, right? Like you said, you can't just have a dungy, a basement gym and say, hey, we offered you a gym. What's the problem? No, we're seeing them, like you're saying, on the ground floor, the second floor, the 7th floor, the 57th floor, where they could be cycling on a Peloton bike in the clouds. Right. That's the experience that people want.
Right, but back in the day, the developers back then were getting, they didn't think that a gym had added value.
Right.
That amenity space didn't provide added value.
Well,
where today, now, the mindset is completely, listen, our office is here. We have 7,500 square feet. We got, today, I think there's maybe 11 people here.
Sure.
We have 50 people working for us. Nobody's here.
What I think a lot of people thought of back in the day was they considered the gym space as an expense line. Where today they're realizing that it could be a huge return on investment, an actual investment.
Right.
And how do you get an investment from the gym? Well, if it's such in demand, you're going to see that investment with heads and beds. You're going to see what sales in your building, right? In multifamily, you're going to see it. You can actually advertise in the gym if you do it right, utilizing the technology.
Listen, there's a lot of things that that the younger generation. I'm 58. But,
you're still young,
right? But a lot of people don't want to wake up and go to a gym down the street or 10 blocks away.
The convenience factor is one of the most easy selling points for a fitness center, right? You're more likely to work out when it's in arm's reach. We don't have the best weather in New York all year round. So it's annoying to go
0 out and the wind's blowing, you're in Midtown Manhattan.
No, you want the luxury of going next door, downstairs, upstairs, what have you, and going to the gym and working out, getting it in, no excuses. And when you're becoming social in that amenity, you can knock on your friend's door and say, hey, you want to meet me in the gym for a workout? Keeps you accountable, keeps you motivated, keeps you healthy. And then that's the true value of that amenity, right?
Right,
value
is
subjective,
it's not just the physical part, it's the mental part, it's the social part. That's all part of it.
All dimensions of wellness.
Yeah. So now I want to go, we're going to stay in the fitness world, but we're going to go in a different direction, right? So the best part about our show is that I always get to ask everyone some questions, right? And those questions we try to project what your opinion of a market is and what's going on. So, back in the day, I did a lot of New York sports clubs. We filed them. We had to wait. We had to wait for the BSA. It took forever. Now we see them closing, opening, different. So what's the commercial gym world like in New York City these days? Is it on an upward trend? Is it more because more people have gyms in their apartments, at their workplace?
Right.
I mean, not in their apartment buildings or in their workspaces, that commercial market has changed.
Right. So I'm more immersed in the multifamily, corporate, police and fire, senior living verticals than the club and the commercial side. The big box retailers normally they go to direct manufacturers.
Oh, so they create their own space, and so with yours is a whole different market.
We're a whole different ball game.
Oh, got it.
But what I am seeing though, that similarities in there is that they are listening also to their end users and not just saying here's the equipment.
So.
What's interesting about technology, though, in say corporate or unmanned facilities and multifamily, is that they now don't see the need to have a crazy amount of trainers at all times. It's an unmanned facility, so you want to walk in, you want to touch a screen, you want to have your workout, and if you're a beginner, so. We obviously design for the general population and general public, and we have to really meet the needs of the end user, say a tenant in a building, no matter if they're a beginner, intermediate, or
like
advanced.
I said, they could be 16 playing on the football team, get working out, and they could be 65 rehabbing their new knee.
The challenge is how do you make everyone happy in 500 square feet, and have some bulky equipment, some really efficient equipment,
and I'm sure that's what separates your firm from doing the consulting and the design, not just selling the equipment. So that's true of any businesses, understanding the users, understanding the end users, and getting feedback from them. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm a big golfer, right? So I love to golf, right? So I want to work out. So I started to do some yoga. And my wife laughed at me. She's like, you're going to do yoga? I went downstairs. I found the golf video. I put it on YouTube. I have my mat. It's in my house. I don't have to worry about somebody laughing at me if I don't do it right. So and it works. But again, you're missing the social aspect. You're missing the interaction. You're missing getting in your car and going somewhere, or going in the elevator and going downstairs. So there's pros and cons to all of it. But you're right. Today, you want to learn how to do anything, you put it on a screen and you figure it out. And it's only going to get better with AI. I mean, it's just.
But you brought up a really good point too. Do you know what one of the most largest reasons is that people do not utilize fitness centers? is because they're scared of looking silly. Like you said, I go into a machine, I don't know what I'm doing on a functional trainer for the first time. What are these cables and pulleys and pins? So what we do, being the consultant, is after everything is installed, we don't just stop and say, okay, call me in 3 to 5 years when technology changes, you want to upgrade. That's what bad reps do. What we do is we're fully immersive in that process, and we lower that level of fear and anxiety to utilize a fitness center, especially for the first time.
Right.
And I actually go there for a couple hours, have a gym open house for the amenity, and invite everyone down.
Oh, that's
and
great.
go through all the equipment and say, okay, this is
because you
and so everyone's loaded with questions. Like they
Of
keep
course.
it in. They won't tell management until it's a problem.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, people don't like the machines that we put in. Well, you know what? Let's spearhead this in the beginning. Let's activate the amenity properly. Let's get your return on investment moving. And then that's when the value comes into play.
Listen, we all have, everyone has fear. It's just part of human nature, right?
Exactly.
So the best part is, I believe, Joe, that you're at episode 15 or 16,
Okay.
right? And from the first episode till now, pretty much everyone who comes in to do the show says they're tentative, right? The same way that I feel about going to the gym and trying to do yoga in front of people that have been doing yoga for 20 years.
Sure.
I'm not flexible. I just don't have, So the podcast is the same way.
Right.
But once someone gives you comfort and someone says, just relax, it's
easy.
free flowing. We're just gonna have a chat about what you do every day. And when people are genuine and people are genuine in the way they present it, and I'm sure that when these tenants come down in the building and say, well, don't be afraid of the treadmill. It's your friend. It's not your enemy.
It's here to keep you healthy and happy.
Right. and you could press this button and it'll tell you this, and it tells you how far you went. It tells you how quickly you did it. It tells you all these things. And by the way, if you get confused, you could press this button and a little person comes up and tells you how to do that. So,
emergency stop, hit this. That's
right.
it.
So there is definitely there's no doubt that in today's world, physical health is incredibly important, but mental health is just as important.
Right.
And social, working out by yourself every day, you start talking to yourself. If you're in the gym, you make friends, right? And that's just the way it is. That's just human nature.
Yeah,
So,
mental cognitive health is huge. There's actually offerings nowadays with the emergence of technology and the implementation of them, enhancing equipment over the years. Take the senior living, areas, for example. They have a product called Cybercycle, and it's medically proven to reduce the onset of dementia and other cognitive illnesses by 23% because it's keeping your mind engaged and sharp and your body engaged.
both.
So, I mean, even on that extreme example, they're taking that and they're putting it into multifamily as well, and they're keeping the kids engaged, they're keeping the parents engaged. You have the virtual reality. AI is about to come, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's all about metrics, engagement, value, entertainment, but convenience.
Now, how do you guys keep track of the amount of usage in these buildings? Like, how do the management companies that's a question I would always ask. So you have 200 residents, and I'm sure some buildings get a lot.
Sure.
Some people get a little. So how does it? How do you project it out? And as the equipment gets older, it gets less. So you try to, reboot it.
Oh yeah, you definitely have to refresh it over the years. Yeah, without a doubt.
And what's the expected life cycle on that fresh one? A couple of years?
No. I mean, it really depends on, which console you're choosing. Say, take cardio, for example. The consoles are always changing. The screens are getting flatter. The screens are getting larger. So even something 3 years ago can look antiquated, but at the same time, it can work
really doing the same
perfect.
thing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's just the content that's being portrayed on the screens and what the manufacturers are offering the tenants. That's what we might want to upgrade. Or leasing, you can trade it in for face value and upgrade your equipment.
Like I said, on the cruise ships, you could see some of them that just beat up because there's so much usage.
Right.
7 days, these thousands of people on them.
Yeah, we have ways to measure it on the back end of the modules where we can see how many hours a machine has been activated, how many profiles were created on certain things. Obviously,
so there's analytics.
There's always analytics. Key fobs for the amenity are a way to see how many people come in.
How many times it's swiped?
Yeah. Yeah, so they want to project that, but at the end of the day, they're going to know if it's working because people are going to be in there, they're going to be utilizing it, they're going to be posting it. We have trainers, across the 9 states that we're in that actually utilize the fitness centers that we create for their training facility, and they're posting it all over Instagram. It gives the gyms, the commercial gyms, a run for their money having it, even in multifamily.
Right. So here we are. We're in August of 2023, and the good news about my show is pretty much on every show I reference my good friend Andrew Peters that I know from Curry and Brown,
yes, yep.
Cost Estimator, and he has a saying that everyone likes to look in the rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. To see what happened before, to project what will happen in the future. And he says, well, I'm kind of different. I like to look forward.
Yeah.
I really try not to look back so much.
Yep.
And the best part about this podcast is that we ask people their opinion, and the good news is I get to have you back. So when you come back, we get to go back and say, hey, Joe, you remember last August, you said that, amenity spaces are growing. Mm-hmm. So if I had one question to ask you is, where do you see the future of, rehabbing or creating new amenity spaces in existing buildings?
Yep.
Is your projection that it will continue to grow? Do you think it's kind of stale? Give the audience a feel of where you think that's going, and obviously, that's part of what you do every day is understand the market.
Yeah. So with the halt of 421A, we're seeing a lot of 80/20 stall, right? So a lot of new shovels aren't going to the ground. But what's happening is...
And we don't like that. The pipeline is very dry.
I know. We feel it too. But at the same time, what's happening is that all the pre-existing buildings are now saying, time to refresh.
Correct.
They're feeling the new developments around them. They're seeing people jump ship, and they want to bring them back in. Just like corporate, what's going to bring people back into your building is the amenities you provide.
Like we said,
it's
what are you adding that someone else doesn't have?
So we are definitely predicting a huge surge in refreshes on the pre-existing buildings. The big management firms are contacting us. They understand the need for it, the demand for it, and we're happy to have those conversations.
All right, great. So I will give Joe a plug. If you're looking for Joe, he's going to be at the end of the podcast. We will have Joe's information up there. You could reach out to him on LinkedIn as well. His last name is Ciolino. He's from Advantage Sport and Fitness. Mm-hmm. You could always reach out to me as well. And looking forward to being on some projects together, Joe.
Definitely, sister.
And I really appreciate you coming in. You're the first one to come in and talk about fitness and amenity spaces. But, there's nothing in New York City that's not intertwined into construction.
Definitely.
And that's the beauty of this city. No matter who you meet, talking about a gym, you'd never know that you and I have a connection. And the connection is deep because you work for some developers that we work with.
Exactly.
And we work for some management companies that you work with. And lo and behold, I never knew you were designing their amenity spaces, but here we are. Yeah. So thank you very much. And looking forward to having you back.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure.